All right, I think it's about time to get this started. It is 3 o'clock. I want to thank you all for joining us this afternoon. This is the very first Let's Talk virtual mental health conference. Although we wish we could be in person, we are so happy that we have the technology to be able to connect with you all this way. My name is Genevieve Frayome, and I'm going to be your host for today. I am also a reporter for K2 News in Portland, and my beat is mental health. And the reason I know about ASHA International and Damn Worth It is because of a youth mental health project that I worked on for about a year. So I am so excited about this collaboration between two great organizations in Oregon. We are going to hear from several speakers today, and they're going to share their personal mental health stories with you, as well as talk about how you can take care of yourself and your own mental health. This event is being produced by ASHA International and the Damn Worth It Company. So we will drop the website links in the chat. Make sure you go on into that chat and copy and paste those web links so you can check out the incredible work these organizations are doing after this conference wraps up, excuse me. And while you're in the chat, we put a little prompt in there earlier, but please put your name down. Let us know where you're coming from, what you like to do, and maybe a fun fact about yourself as we can get this conference rolling. We're excited to learn more about everyone who is attending this conference virtually today. Our speakers are here live with us to answer your questions, but we want to let you know that their presentations are recorded. So while those presentations are happening, go into the chat box and submit any questions that you have, the Zoom Q&A box. Now we have two giveaways and we'll be selecting winners from those who submit their questions. So make sure you put those questions in because you'll be entered to win one of two prizes. The first prize is a Damn Worth It sweatshirt, and the second is a My Story, My Superpower t-shirt and a $20 gift card. You can also submit questions anonymously. Just know that you won't be entered to win unless you submit the question with your name attached. That way we can connect to you and let you know that you won. We are recording this presentation, so it will be available to rewatch later this week, and we will send a link to all of the registered attendees. So not only can you rewatch it whenever you want, you can also send it to loved ones for them to check out what you learned today. We would love it if you went and followed ASHA International and Damn Worth It on Instagram and post about the event using the hashtag Let's Talk. Again, we are going to put those handles in the chat box there, so just go on into the chat feature, copy and paste those, and look those up a little bit later. And lastly, before we kick off and we hear from our first speaker, we want to emphasize that while we want today to be inspiring and filled with messages of hope, there may be things shared by our speakers that are triggering and they may be tough for some people to hear. We want you to know that you have resources available to you. If you find yourself in any kind of position like that, please know that you are not alone. And if you do need additional support, you can click on the link in the chat for the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. That also is a very important link to click and save to your bookmarks. Now, to start us off, I would like to introduce Audrey Steele. Audrey is a high school student at Lincoln High School in Portland, Oregon, and she is here today on behalf of ASHA International to spread a message of hope and to share her story.
I've never felt at home on my body. From a young age, the media and people have been telling me that if I don't look like a Photoshop photo, then I have no value. This message was constantly hammered into my head and made my body feel like its only purpose was to hold me back. I grew up with a parent who struggled with an eating disorder. Unintentionally, I picked up on behaviors and thoughts. I learned unhealthy values about how much looks and weight matter. Those values still stick with me in the back of my head. I noticed I was bigger than all my friends, and I felt out of place. In 5th grade, a kid called me fat. I made myself think that all my problems were because I wasn't skinny. From that point on, my looks on my body were my biggest concern. I hadn't learned what diets were, so I was confused why I looked like this while others looked like that. I was frustrated and everything felt unfair. I was deemed worthless for some reason I didn't understand. I thought all my problems would be fixed if I looked like the models or fit the beauty standard. Every piece snapped together in 7th grade. It was during the eating disorder unit. We learned about behaviors and how to help our friends if they were struggling. But right after the eating disorder unit, we were thrown into the obesity unit. The teachers told us horror stories about the dangers of junk food and unhealthy diets. They made us track everything we ate. Food became the enemy to me. Food was the reason I was unworthy. On top of that, I was stressed. My grades were poor, I was struggling with my ADD and anxiety, and my friends were in a fight. I needed a break. Instead of coping in a healthy way or talking to someone, I fell into dangerous behaviors. I ate less and less and exercised every day. My eating disorder consumed my thoughts like a virus. I set weight goals, but every time I reached them, it wasn't enough. I would feel sick and have panic attacks if I didn't listen to my eating disorder. My body would start getting sick too. I pushed away my friends and locked myself in my room. The only thing that mattered was my body and how much I ate. I'm the type of person who keeps everything to themselves. I feel bad if I make people worry or help me. So I never told anyone what was going on. When my friends or family asked a question, I said it was fine and shut them down. My mom thankfully stepped in and took me to a doctor. They together decided I wasn't healthy and needed some help. I was sent to a clinic where I was aided in recovery. Going to a clinic was the best thing I could have done. I had multiple types of therapy, including group, where I realized I wasn't alone and what was going on in my brain. Just like a sickness, recovery was long and exhausting. But I got the help I needed, and I am able to keep myself healthy with support from therapists and friends. Looking back, talking to my mom and doctor was so helpful. People tell us that we should be ashamed of mental health, and that's something you keep to yourself. We treat it like it's taboo and shouldn't be talked about, that mental health conditions make you weak and less than. But that stigma keeps so many people who are struggling from getting the help they need. Talking to others and getting help is a very important step in recovery, and people may never be able to take that step, especially during COVID when we're isolated, and it's challenging to reach out to others. I'm still recovering and always will be, so I need to talk to my therapist to keep myself healthy or when I just need to vent. I'm not afraid to tell my support system if I need some help, because I know they care for me and just want me to be healthy. Some days when I feel I can't talk to people, I learned coping mechanisms like distraction and thought challenging to keep my head above water. We need to start treating mental health like a health issue and not a shameful thing. Many people who are struggling are not able to receive the same care I did. So many eating disorders go undiagnosed because they aren't taken seriously or told that they're fake. While I was in the clinic, there was only one boy also receiving help. This isn't because men don't develop eating disorders, it's because we're told eating disorders are only for girls, so men don't get taken seriously. On the flip side, we normalize girls eating smaller portions, so girls go undetected. Or if someone overweight develops a disorder, people think it's just a diet and don't provide help. Opening up a conversation will not only provide us help, but also education about how to aid friends and what mental health condition truly means. When we take this step, so many people afraid to reach out will be able to get help, or people will be able to aid their smaller struggles before they become overwhelming. The next time you're struggling, reach out, ask for some help. Help aid us in our battle to spread hope and end the stigma around mental health.
Thank you so much to Audrey for sharing her inspiring story there. She brings up such an important point. Obviously, we know why we are all here virtually. That is because we are in the middle of a pandemic, but that pandemic has made so many mental health and mental illness struggles more challenging as people have felt alone. So it's important to hear stories like Audrey's and how she explains she continued to get help throughout this pandemic. Next up, we have another student speaker, Sydney Guthrie-Baker. Sydney is a senior at Oregon State University in Corvallis, Oregon. She is competing in both the hammer throw and shot put. In fact, she just got back from Pac-12s. She has a degree in kinesiology and nutrition health sciences. And after Sydney's presentation, she and Audrey will hop on here live to answer any questions that you have. So be sure to go into that chat box and submit any questions you have right now. Remember, if you submit with your name, you will be entered to win a prize later on in the conference. So get in there, submit your questions. And for now, let's go on and listen to Sydney's story.
Hi, hello everyone. I am super excited to be here. First and foremost, allow me to introduce myself. My name is Sydney, and I am a fifth-year senior at Oregon State University on the women's track and field team. I could not begin my time here without first thanking Damn Worth It and the ASHA group for allowing me to be here to speak with you all today. I am beyond honored to have this time with you all because I too have struggled with my mental health in high school and in college. The topic of mental health, for me, that wasn't introduced to me until I was in middle school. And unfortunately, it was around a time that a dear friend of mine suddenly took his life that spring, specifically in the month of April. I remember time freezing. And I quite didn't know how to feel. I, as well as the rest of the 8th grade class, learned right away the different stages of grief because we were all experiencing it at the same time. From then on, I started noticing different ways people were just experiencing life. I saw depression, many forms of depression, many forms of anxiety, heavy exhaustion, and stress, all of it at a young age. I remember how it was difficult to shift my focus from my friends passing to basketball practice and then schoolwork. It was all confusing. And I knew it wasn't normal for me to feel that, but I just simply didn't know what was happening. Now that I look back as a college graduate, I wish there was help and education about mental health around that time because I know myself and others would have benefited from that tremendously. We didn't quite know how to cope and how long the process of grieving and coping would actually be. We didn't know until that day of my friend's passing how far poor mental health could take someone. It was simply just all brand new to us. So that was how I was first introduced to the topic of mental health. Now, growing up, I did absolutely every sport I could get my hands on. Believe it or not, I ran cross country. I played basketball, volleyball, soccer, track. I even tried golf. That was super fun. I did just about everything. But one thing that I found in common across all of these sports is that practice simply makes perfect. And if you want to be good or great, actually, you have to be willing to put in the quality time and dedication. With quality time comes quality focus. And that itself can take a lot of energy and mental space in your mind. And I think that it is so important to address that early on. I am in a sport now where there are a lot of physics involved. And by physics, I mean force, mass, acceleration, torque, tension, all of it. And so a slight mishap in my technique can make the difference of a new personal record in distance and not. And in some cases, it can be the difference between being at the top of the leaderboard and then the bottom of the leaderboard. So it's safe to say that there's a lot of pressure when competing in an individual sport because ultimately that's your name being called up to throw. It's not your team. The whole team doesn't come up to you in the ring. That wouldn't be enough room in the ring. It's just you. It's just you. Your implement, you're right there. You have all the nervous energy and then you have to go. So one thing that has helped me stay grounded all these years of competing is simply reassuring myself that I am doing the best that I can, regardless of what kind of day it is. And ultimately, I worked another day towards becoming a better athlete. It is so easy to get wrapped up in all of the stressors that come with school, sports, work, extracurriculars, clubs, activities, literally anything, and just simply juggling it all. I can already think of 5 moments where I thought to myself, I don't think I can do this for much longer. It's kind of embarrassing. This is a lot. How am I going to get through this? And I remember I felt stressed, overwhelmed. I was exhausted after a full night's of rest. And then I was exhausted throughout the rest of the day because even though my body was laying down and resting, my mind was already going a million miles an hour, thinking about how far I need to throw in order to qualify for regionals and championships and what score I need to get on the next exam in order to boost my grade or keep my grade or, however it works out at the time. And literally just anything and everything else in between. It's just a lot happening. But you have to sit back and remind yourself that what you're doing is a lot, but that does not mean impossible. Let me just say that one more time. I know somebody needs to hear it. What you are doing is a lot, but that does not mean impossible. There are ways to continue to do what you love without experiencing such burnout, stress, anxiety throughout the entire length of this journey that we simply just call life. So ways that I managed it was by getting help. I am someone who is not quick to ask for help. I would rather fail on my own before asking for help because I felt that it would put a burden on another person. Newsflash, that's not true at all. It is not true at all. After I have a conversation with a professional, I feel so much better because I got to just leave it all out on the table and ultimately just get it off my chest. I go to practice that day with a new look on how I've progressed over the years. And it makes me excited to look ahead on how much more progress I can make. In those moments, I don't think about the rankings, the numbers, none of it. I just simply think about how far I have come. And trust me, I've been in this sport for over 5 years, well over 5 years. And so I've come a long way. But those little moments can make the biggest difference. Another thing that I do is journaling. If you're like me and super busy, there is a quick yet effective way to journal out your day. It's an app that I use on my phone. It's called Daylio, Daylio. And I'm able to journal by simply just clicking on the activities that I did in the day and the overall mood. It takes me less than a minute to journal, to create my journal entry, and it helps me think about the highlights of my day. So those two things, along with some mindfulness exercises, proper nutrition and hydration, has allowed me to tap into another level of focus that I use in practice. And overall, I am becoming a more calm and a more mature athlete each day. So students, student athletes, you matter. I cannot stress that enough. You matter. Your mental health matters. You can only be as good as your mind allows you to. So you have to take care of yourself. And please know that it is 100% okay to say you need help. Now, if you are someone that feels that you are a safe space for others to vent to, please share that. Please, please, please share that. You never know when a friend of yours needs someone to listen to and they don't know who to go to. For me, I know I have some teammates that are that safe space for me, and they know that I am that safe space for them. And please check in with your friends and your loved ones. You don't know what they are going through until you listen for yourself. Be a lending ear, grant someone a helping hand, and go change the world. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you so much for your time. I wish each and every one of you the absolute best. And if I did not stress this enough, you matter. Your mental health matters. And I hope you enjoy the rest of today's programming. Thank you so much. And I cannot leave this without saying, go Bees.
That was so wonderful, Sydney and Audrey. It's so great to see you both. I think Audrey is hanging on there. Hopefully we'll be able to turn on her video soon, but we are going to do a Q&A with Sydney and Audrey. We're so glad that they are here live with us. Sydney, I actually want to address this first question to you because you did touch on it and what you were just talking about. But Laura Sprouse asked for Sydney and Audrey, do you have any daily habits that support your mental health and wellness? So I know you talked about journaling. Has there been anything else that you've done that maybe hasn't worked for you but has worked for others?
Great question, which first of all, hello everyone. Pardon my voice. I cheer a lot at Pac-12, so this is the product of it. But another thing that I do to just basically frame my day and just get myself in a positive mental health headspace is that once I make my coffee, so I'm a huge coffee drinker. For those who like tea, I like tea too, whatever. Whatever is your go-to, whatever wakes you up in the morning. I just sit here for just 10 minutes and I just enjoy my coffee. Like I just sit there and I just enjoy it. I don't think about pulling up my laptop. I don't think about pulling up any other work. I commit 10 minutes to myself in the morning to really center myself and make sure I'm in a headspace that is like, okay, after 10 minutes, I am ready. And normally I'm ready. And it can be 10. Sometimes it takes me 15. Sometimes it takes me 20, whatever my time budgeting is, depending on the day. But long story short, I commit to whatever time I set and I just sit there and I just peacefully just enjoy my coffee
no hesitation on grabbing anything else around me, and I just center myself in the environment that I'm in.
That's awesome. I love to hear that. Audrey is having a few video and audio issues, so she might jump off and then come back on. But I think we can roll through some of these questions with you first. Sydney, we have another question from Diane, and she says, what are your thoughts about the use of medication to help with psychiatric distress and illness? What advice do you have for feeling unmotivated or hopeless?
That's a great question. When it comes to medications, obviously, I am not a board psychiatrist. I'm not a licensed psychologist, but I think the main understanding is that you know your body the best, and you have to trust yourself. You have to trust yourself in whatever you choose to do. Um, for me personally, I do not take any medication. I really rely on my nutrition. I am very heavy on my micronutrients, such as the fat soluble vitamins, so vitamins A, D, E, and K. I really focus on turmeric is great actually. I focus on magnesium to help me calm down. And then I focus on vitamin C for that sort of natural boost of energy, along with the vitamin B complex and calcium and zinc to really get myself going for the rest of the day. But yeah, overall, just you know your body the best. If you feel that you do need to take a medication to do so, please feel free to seek that professional help that you need to do. For me specifically, I really focus on my diet and my sleeping habits to make sure that when I wake up the next day, I am as refreshed as I can possibly be.
Yeah, it's an important point there that everyone's treatment is different, and some people really do need medication or can benefit from that. So make sure that you consult with your doctor. I will say we have Derek Halber coming up, who is helping us with a movement activity, and he talks a little bit about his experience with medication and without medication. And so, you know, it is a great resource for a lot of people, and some people really do need that medication, and it's important. But like Sydney's been saying, there are other ways that might work better for you. And it looks like we've got Audrey back. I am glad we've got video and audio working. There actually is a question just for you. So it says, for Audrey, this is from Sarah. For Audrey, you mentioned not talking to others about your feelings during those early years. Can you think of anything an adult school or staff member could have said to you to help you feel supported that might have led you to sharing your needs earlier?
Well, whenever anyone approached me about it, I was very defensive and put up. I was like, I'm fine. No, this is all normal. If someone asked me specifically and actually was able to say the words eating disorder and underweight and not just try to beat around the bush, then I might have had a more of a responsive reaction, actually being able to talk about it, because I knew it was going on. I didn't think anyone else did, so I was able to hide it. But so if a person approached me and is like, Audrey, I'm worried about your eating, I believe you have an eating disorder and you seem underweight, then I would probably be like, oh, I can actually talk to this person because they understand what's going on.
And Sydney, I don't know if you want to jump in here too. Sarah was also wondering if you have any insight.
For me, especially around the time when I lost my friend, I think one of the biggest things that was helpful for me as well as the rest of the class I was in was, you know, our teachers. I mean, we were young. We were eighth grade. You know, that's part of a very formative part of your childhood, or you know, as you form into being a teenager and hormones, all this stuff. And one of the biggest things that I remember from one of the teachers was that she pulled all of us, the eighth grade class, she just pulled all of us aside, and she just had us sit down, and she was like, I have your back. She just said, I have your back. She didn't mention anything else about my friend. She just simply said, I have your back. I know this is brand new to you. And this is brand new to everyone. This is brand new. It was actually brand new for her as a teacher to go through something like this, especially with you have a class of students that are all grieving at the same time, even though our grieving patterns are all different. And so just having a teacher say, I have your back, or just having a teacher say, I hear you, I see you, and I feel you, that speaks volumes. And I wish I had somebody like that in high school to just say, I know you're working hard. I know you're doing the best that you can. Here's my support. Just something simple. You don't have to overthink it. You don't have to go through like a Rolodex of things to say. You could just simply just say like, I am here for you, and say, say it like you mean it. You don't just say it just to say. You gotta say it like you mean it. And yeah, I wish I had something like that. It would be amazing. It would simply be amazing.
Sarah says thank you for both those really insightful answers. I want to say thank you too. I think it's such an important conversation. And, I think just going off of what Sydney was saying, a lot of times when someone is struggling to get the words out, they don't need a huge push. And maybe just something like Sydney was saying, like that, I see you and I'm here for you. Like she said, it can really speak volumes. And so if you see someone struggling, don't overthink it. Just, lend out a helping hand, maybe give them a hug if that's appropriate. And, they'll come to you when they're ready, but just keep a close eye on them. There's another question here that I wanted to ask you guys. What is one thing you think we can do to help our friends and family with their own mental health?
I like that question. I like that question a lot. Simply listen. There's a term for listening. It's called pseudo listening or pseudo listening. And that's when you only listen to the parts that make you want to respond to something right away, instead of listening to the whole thing that the person is saying. You got to listen to the whole thing that the person is saying, because there is a story to be told from the person that is struggling in a way. Just listen. That's all I ask from those in my friend group or those in my family group. I just be like, hey, can I just tell you? And I just want to fully tell you. I don't need a response. I don't need advice. Let me just tell you what I got going on. That to me makes a huge difference. So yeah, just listen. Just simply listen.
Well, what really worked for me was when I went to group therapy and I was able to make friends, actually like kind of hearing, we all didn't have the same diagnosis, but just hearing like a bit of what they went through helped me realize that I'm not alone and that these people like understand what it's like to have mental illness and understand how hard it is to really talk to people. So it was just nice and refreshing for like me knowing that I can talk to them and they would understand, and also having a equal trust that they can talk to me and that I can just kind of take a step back and kind of like realize how like big this like world is and how everyone has something going on, and that this isn't just me like fighting this battle alone, but like having like a set group of people who have a good connection to.
Yeah, those are both great answers. And Diane just wanted to say, I hear you, I see you, I feel you. She just really resonates with that, Sydney. I think those words are so important, and, they might seem small, but they can definitely have a huge impact on someone, especially, young kids. I think, just from my own personal experience and developing and growing older, I still to this day suffer from anxiety, and started when I was really young, but I didn't know what it was as a young kid. And so just having somebody say, oh, it's okay, like this is normal, and not try and like push it off in any way, and just saying, like this people go through this all the time, and there are resources for you, there's help for you. And so making kids really feel, or your friends and family just feel like they're not alone, I think is really important too. I would also say another important thing for people to know is, if you are a really supportive friend or family member, Sydney, as you said you are, and vice versa with your friends, I mean, make sure that if your friends are struggling or your families are struggling, that you do get them some professional help, lead them to professional resources. I think, we can feel so comforted in just talking with those that we love. But there's so much help and so much growth that can come from talking with a professional. So if someone is fearful of taking that next step, I think if you know someone with mental health challenges or mental illness, don't be afraid to tell them, hey, seek professional help, because that's an incredible resource where people can learn a lot about themselves. Okay, let's see if there's any more questions. I think that was it. I mean, is there anything else that Sydney and Audrey that you wanted to add? Any parting words?
I would just really say, take everything seriously. Like, even if it's a small thing, don't just like brush it off and be like, oh, they'll get over it. Like, when a person comes to you with something, they're like asking for you to listen and asking for you to help. And it's like, to you, it might be nothing, but to them, it could mean so much more. So don't like take it seriously and actually try to give them help and try to listen.
Another thing is too, and I touched on this earlier, if you are someone that you feel that you are a safe space for others, please announce that. Oh my gosh, I remember, so for me, like I said earlier, I have two really close teammates of mine. We've been together from the very beginning up until now, and we made an establishment, us three, that we are our safe space. Our group right here, this is our safe space, and we've already made it an establishment that whatever's said in our little group, that it's confidential, because at some point the person who had to talk with such vulnerability, and that's something that we want to respect all the way through. And so if you find yourself being that person where you're like, I am a confidential person, you can talk to me about anything, it'll only stay with me, please share that with others, especially if you notice any behaviors that are different from what you normally see outside of norm. And especially like in a school setting, if you see a student or students coming in with something different, a different mantra, something, something that's kind of catching your eye, feel free to just pull them aside and just be like, hey, just want to let you know, just checking in, just want to see how are things going? How are you doing? Is homework? How's homework? I have a ton of homework, but at the end of the day, just ask the tiny questions. And again, don't overthink it. Don't overthink it. The fact that you are already going up to someone just to let them know that you're there for them and that you support them already speaks tons about you and what you bring basically to this world. And so don't overthink it. Just simply check in and listen. Just listen to the whole story. Don't listen for little bits and pieces. Listen to the entire story. Those are my parting words. Long parting words, but they're my parting words.
They're perfect. Well, thank you so much to both Sydney and Audrey. It's so wonderful to have you both here and to share your energy and your stories. We are so appreciative. I want to let everybody else know that if you have any other questions, feel free to pop into that chat box and just submit them. Again, you will be entered to win one of the 2 prizes that we have. So we have 2 more speakers coming up that you can ask questions for. So just keep that chat box open so you can drop your questions in there. And it's hard to believe, but we are already halfway through this program. We know it's a lot to sit and listen, and it's a lot to take in. So we want to make sure everyone gets up and gets moving before we listen to our next 2 speakers. So as I mentioned, we have Derek Halber, a coach at Orange Theory, and he is going to share a bit more about his mental health story and then lead us through some movement activity.
Hi. My name is Derek, and I wanted to start by telling you a little bit how I kind of found my way back to fitness as a way of really optimizing and balancing both my physical and really my mental health. So back in high school, I was a competitive basketball and volleyball player and really a high achiever. And along with that, I really experienced a lot of anxiety around underperforming, not fitting in, and generally just being unsuccessful. However, it wasn't until university when I was studying psychology that I actually started to recognize signs and symptoms of depression. I was fortunate in this case to have a knowledge of the different treatments option available, and I chose to start an antidepressant regimen. Within a short amount of time, I actually worked my way all the way up to a very high dosage of that antidepressant medication for over a year that I was on that. And that led all the way up to major periods of apathy, frequent instances of dissociation, fugue, as well as my emotions being all but completely flattened out. This, along with experiencing severe withdrawal symptoms, even if I missed just one day, led me to come to the conclusion that that medication was not really for me, and I slowly weaned myself off, which was also a very big and arduous challenge. From there, long story short, I kind of found my way back into fitness from all but cutting it out through my university career. This allowed me to really regain the joy that comes from moving my body, both athletically and often as well. I really found this to really help me take control of my own fitness, and it really led me to kind of lead people on that same journey as well. So for today, what I want to take you through some light movement exercises that we can scale all the way up into some bit of a fitness challenge and some workouts. So the first thing is I know that you might have been on this computer for a little while, and I always want to check in to make sure that everyone is keeping your body safe. So if you ever see something that I'm doing on the screen and you already know that's not right for your body, please don't do that, but you can hopefully use an earlier progression that I've used earlier on, or think about something that's just going to work for your body. So we always want to make sure that working out is hard, but it's never to the point of hurting or feeling pain. And I want to start things off by giving those eyes a bit of a break. So just where you are right now, I just want you to shut your eyes and close your eyes a bit tight. Let those eye muscles relax, and then just relax and open again. Let's do that a couple times. Close those eyes tight and maybe look around, up, down, left, right, before you open again. Let's do that one more time, squeezing those eyes shut and then coming all the way back open. And now that we've relaxed those eyes, let's take a check-in on those breathing. I wanted you to put one hand onto your chest and one hand onto your belly. This is an exercise that I do a lot of time to help recenter the body. I want you to take a breath in, but only allow your bottom hand to move. Take that deep breath, try and inflate your belly like a balloon, and then let that breath go again. You want to try and have that top hand not move at all. So again, deep inhale, like you're pulling air in through a straw through your nose. Allow that belly to inflate, and then allow it to just deflate. Maybe open your mouth and let that happen. One more time so you can feel your belly move and get those diaphragmatic muscles engaged, and then let that go. And now I want you to feel the contrast. So let's take a big breath from your chest. Lift all the way up, and then let that go. One more time, and as you lift up, pause, feel that big stretch into your chest, all the way into your ribs, and then let that go again. And now here's the challenge. Let's see if you can take an even bigger breath using both of those concepts. So relax those shoulders, take a deep inhale through your belly, and then continue to inhale all the way up into your chest before you let all of that air go again. So one more big time, big belly breath. Pause so you can inflate your rib cage, lift all the way up into your chest, maybe sitting that little bit straighter, and then let everything go. So hopefully that gives you a little bit more of a sense of relaxed. And now let's get into some stretches. So the first thing that I want to do is a little bit of some seated stretches. So when we're sitting down, that blood gets pushed out of our glutes. So whether you're sitting in a chair or maybe on the floor where you're watching this, let's see if you can cross one leg all the way over and just lean forwards, back and forth. We just want to pulse into that big seated glute stretch. And if you're having trouble with this, remember your leg doesn't have to be down as low as mine. You can always use the angle or stretch your other leg out to where you can feel that it's a comfortable stretch. Because stretching should hopefully be comfortable and never really feeling like it's straining or hurting. Once you've done on one side, let's do the same thing on the other side as well. So tip forwards, feel for that stretch a couple of times. And then from there, we're going to do the same thing, but more through the insides of your legs. So you're going to take a wide stance, as straight as your legs are able to go, and just start by tipping forwards. You should feel a big stretch into your groin, into those hamstrings. And again, work with where your body is. You may need to bend your knees a little bit. Your feet might need to be still flat on the ground, and as you tip forwards, you can still search for that stretch. After you've done a couple of times, let's turn that into a big circle. So lean down towards one side. If you can, walk your fingers along the ground all the way over to the other side and right back up. Once we do 3 big circles in one direction, it only makes sense to balance things out, and we can kind of stop and switch going around to the other side as well. Excellent. All right, and from here, let's get those muscles a little bit more moving. So I want to challenge your quads, your hips, and maybe a little bit of those glutes. You might need to hold on to your chair for this one. I want you to stretch your leg up, bring it all the way out to the side, and then setting it back down. If you feel that cramp in your hip, obviously that's a sign to stop, but otherwise, lift that all the way back in. You can feel those quads working to lift your leg and those hips as you move all the way out to the side. Once we've done a couple on one side, let's switch and do a couple on that other side. You might be getting a little bit warmer by now, so hopefully you have some water ready, or maybe you can go grab some water after this. Now from here, now we've gone through a little bit of those exercises, it's time to stand up. Now, if I stand up, I'm going to go off camera, so I'm going to kneel down, but I do want you to get up and out of your chairs. So while you're standing, the next thing I want to do is get that circulation pumping. Start to just bounce, jump around, let your body shake. Doesn't matter who's watching, feel the energy kind of come back to your body as you're shaking around. And from here, next up, let's get into a bit of those standing stretches. So we've started off by stretching out your lower body, and now it's time to stretch out your upper body. Again, you can be standing, you can stay in your chair if that works for you. I want you to have both hands out in front, and let's reach one as far back as you can. Get that big stretch to your chest. Start to feel that as your arm goes out wide, it's not just to stretch your chest, but pull your arm back to feel those posture muscles waking back up from sitting in front of that screen. Once we go a couple of times doing one arm at a time, I want you to open out nice and wide, maybe rotate and lift up towards the sky and coming all the way back around, and then just give yourself that big hug. Wrap your arms around, drop your elbows to feel that stretch, and let's do that 2 more times. Opening out wide, wrapping around, and dropping those elbows down. One more time, big open, give yourself that big hug, give yourself a pat on the back for being here for today, and let's move into our next exercise. The next one, again, I want to stretch the chest, and I want to move and activate those muscles of your back, and I call this an angel. You're going to open up your palms, press them back behind the level of your body, and then trace all the way up so that your thumbs touch, maybe they don't touch, above your head. Try and feel that you're stretching out from those fingertips the whole time. And if I turn sideways, you can see that it's not just in line with my body, but try to reach back a little bit. So you can feel those shoulder blades lifting all the way up and pressing all the way back down. So from there, let's shake things out. The last one that I want to work on for that upper body is getting into a little bit more of that support through your shoulders. And this can work its way all the way up into a bit of an inverted or pike position. So if you're standing, I'm going to come off camera for a sec. You're just going to tip forwards and walk your hands out until you're in that push-up position. From here, you can either walk your hands back in so that my head is pointed down towards the ground and I'm pressing into my shoulders, or you can walk your toes in. Once you get those toes all the way in, feel for that stretching your hamstrings, press your hands into the floor to feel that you're getting that blood going in a different direction than it usually goes when you're standing all the way up. Now, here's where the challenge comes in. You can always add in extra things, like a push-up when you get down there, or a push-up from your knees if you're not able to do it all the way from your toes. And if you have that rolling office chair, well, maybe instead of putting your feet on the ground, you're going to put your feet up onto the chair instead. Remember, always be safe. I can now walk my hands towards my chair if my chair doesn't roll, or I can try and pull my toes towards my hands if my chair does happen to roll back and forth. So from here, we're going to come back down. The last thing that I want to end off with for a little bit is just getting a little bit more of that blood flow and circulation to those hips and glutes. So what we're going to do is we're going to start off again standing. I want you to keep your feet together as you squat down, and then you're going to slowly bounce your way out to the side as wide as you can in one side, and then work your way all the way back in. From there, we're going to go all the way out to the other side. Use that little bit of a pulse to light that little bit of a fire on those legs before you're sitting back down. And then from there, I think we have time to do one more side. One more time on each side. And hopefully once you've done that a couple of times, that gives you that little bit of fire. Again, you're going to stand up. I'm going to kneel down, but just shake out your bodies. Rock out those shoulders. Have a couple of deep breaths. And I want you to relax and enjoy the rest of your day.
All right. I hope you guys were all able to get up and get moving. Some great, very challenging exercises there. I have to admit, I have slippers on because you can't tell. So some of those were a little bit challenging wearing the slippers that I have. Many, many thanks to Derek for jumping in and getting us moving this afternoon. Well, next we would like to welcome Professor Amir Al-Maibad. He's from Oregon State University, and Ameer is an instructor at OSU. He's a social psychologist who researches personal success and how it interacts with one's well-being. So you can think of him as a success psychologist. He researches topics like mindset, goal setting, strategy formation, motivation, stress, purpose, meaning, and many others, and he looks at how they all interact with how people feel. Ameer does success coaching when he has time, and here he is.
Hello and welcome. My name is Amir Al-Maibad, and I research success. Success is individually defined and can be health, wealth, happiness, legacy, or anything you want it to be. But often, success comes at the expense of mental health. A broader umbrella that includes mental health is well-being. That's what I will be using. Now, suppose that your dream is to become the best doctor in the world. Most people sacrifice their well-being to reach that dream. When that happens, we often ask the question, was it worth it? Clearly, the answer is no. So then what could one do to make sure that they maintain their well-being and still reach their dreams? An additional question is this, which is about the relationship well-being and success have. That is, don't I need to have a decent level of well-being in order to succeed? It's a good question. It turns out research clearly shows that just like higher well-being can lead to success, beginning to succeed, of course, in any way you want to succeed, can also lead to higher well-being. That means it also works the other way around. Here's something that is very possible. Suppose that you managed to make progress working on your dreams. That leads to higher well-being. Higher well-being enhances your success, and that cycle continues in an upward spiral. The message here is simple. Instead of choosing mental health over success, or choosing success over mental health, you can keep both. Let's consider this for a second. Often, one's well-being can hit a point where it does not allow them to pursue their dreams. That happens. Suppose that they are doing everything they can to get and to be better, but they are not able to do two things. Number one, they're not able to improve their well-being. And as a result, number two, they're not able to pursue their dreams of changing the world in their respective field. So the next logical question here is this. If all else fails, how can succeeding help the issue of low well-being? How can that happen? Actually, you only need to begin to succeed. You don't have to fully succeed and realize your success. As in, you only need to make small progress toward your dreams in order for that to help. While I cannot give you much details in just 12 or 13 minutes, let me give you a brief idea about how, according to science, one can do that. How you can do that according to science. So far, I said the word dreams several times, but dreams should be converted into formal goals that are written. One key thing I find in my research is that making progress on just any goal would actually not have the effect needed on your well-being. So the goals you set and make small, continuous progress on need to be something that you truly internally care about. It's actually a concept in technical language we call self-concordance. Additionally, those goals should feed into a bigger picture goal, what we call purpose. I'm going to talk a little bit about purpose. Perhaps at another time, I can tell you more about how to sit down and do all of that. But for now, just remember this. It can be very detrimental to one's well-being, and specifically, narrowly, mental health, to have low or no sense of purpose. So purpose is very, very important. One major obstacle I find in my research, as well as when I coach people, is this. Pursuing one's goals requires a lot of effort. And putting in effort can obviously be very, very stressful. That can stop someone from beginning their success journey. So one of the first things that I tackle when working with people is to address what I call the stress hindrance. Stress is often not only a yield sign on the street that slows you down, it can be a stop sign that completely stops you. You don't even begin your success journey often. So here's the good news for you. Having purpose also helps with your stress experience. And that's a beautiful thing. What it does is this. It reduces your stress, the stress that you experience when putting in a lot of effort when you're pursuing your dreams and your goals. That does so many great things for you, not bad things that are done to you. It does so many great things for you, such as reducing the possible, say, depression that may stem from feeling aimless, as in having little or no purpose. Also, research shows that stress per se is actually not bad. It turns out that what is bad is your belief that stress is bad for you. That is what harms you, not the amount of stress that you experience. And that may seem counterintuitive, but if you rely on your intuition to figure out what is true in science, it will fail you about 50% of the time. So many things will be counterintuitive. But should this surprise you that just the belief that stress is bad for you is what harms you, not how much stress you experience? No, because it happens every day in your life, arguably. Just like the body affects the mind also affects the body. Imagine this. Imagine being home alone and you hear someone knocking on the door late at night, all right? If you were expecting someone, your physiological response, your physiology, may be neutral, may not change much, if at all. But if you're not expecting someone, if you're not expecting anyone, your physiology will possibly be that of fear. This physiological response happened actually in response to the same exact stimulus in both scenarios. But what mattered was how you interpreted that stimulus, which is the knock on the door. Stress has what I call the Arizona sun effect. The sun on a summer day in Arizona, per se, is not good, not bad, and not neutral. It depends on how you use it. If you're hydrated and use proper sunscreen, the sun can be good because it gives you vitamin D, among other benefits. If you're dehydrated and don't wear sunscreen, the sun can clearly harm you. If you stay inside, you neutralize the effects of the sun on you. Well, it turns out stress is the same exact way. It is how you use stress that can make it good or bad, not stress itself. Of course, what I'm referring to here is what I call desirable stress, such as stress coming from working on homework in order to pursue your goals. Well, what I'm referring to here is not stress that comes from unfortunate adversity events, such as a traumatic car accident, of course. But how do you use stress to your advantage? It turns out all you need is two things. A, to realize that stress can be beneficial for your performance, for your health, and your well-being, as research clearly shows. And obviously you just realized that because I just told you. B, when you're in a stressful moment, you interpret or reappraise what you're feeling as a sign that your body is gearing up for a challenge, not for a threat. That's all you need to do. And you see tremendous results. Lastly, make sure that you work with your mental health professional throughout all of this if you begin your success journey or if you're already on your success journey. As for some cases, of course, some adjustments and some exceptions should be made of what I'm saying. If you or your group or institution would like to learn more, I'm more than happy and thrilled to visit and speak, but obviously we don't have much time to discuss everything today. That being said, if you are feeling stuck or hopeless today, I hope that I offer you some science-based hope, science-based realistic positivity, optimism, and more importantly, personal empowerment. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much to Ameer. I cannot wait to have both Ameer as well as our next speaker. It's just an incredible speaker. We are having Shell Thompson here, and she is a footwear tech developer at Nike. She's a former WNBA player and a 2004 WNBA champion. So she and Ameer will join us after Shell's presentation to do a live Q&A. So we have a few questions that have already been lined up for Ameer, and I'm sure many more will come in as Shell shares her story. So I'd like to invite Shell, and we will listen to her, and then we will do the live Q&A.
Good afternoon, everybody. Hello to everyone on the call. A big thank you for allowing me the opportunity to come and speak with you today. I'm super excited to be able to spend this time with you sharing my story. And I'm super excited, more importantly than that, to have the discussion about mental health and to have the discussion about hope. Hope for today, hope for tomorrow, hope for our future. So as you all heard in my introduction, my name is Shell Thompson. I'm a former professional athlete. And when people hear former professional athlete, the word superhuman comes up, because professional athletes are thought of as superhumans. And that's kind of true in a way, because we have to be superhuman to do some of the things that we do. We have to be a different breed for the physicality of the competition and the mentality of the competition. But I want you guys to focus on the second part of that title, human. We are human. We have the same traumas. We have the same tragedies. We have the same life situations and experiences as the ordinary person. And just like the ordinary person, if we don't attend to ourselves and find healthy ways to cope, just like the ordinary person, we eventually crash and burn. So when it comes to mental health, there's three things that come to mind for me. Number one, mental health is generational. What do I mean by that? That means not only are the hurts of our ancestors and our great-great-great-grandparents and our parents passed on down to us, but how they cope with those issues are passed down to us as well. What does that mean? If you come up in a family that teaches you that crying is not the best thing to do to handle your emotions. Crying is a sign of weakness, especially for men. Men, you're taught not to cry or show emotion. That's not good for your mental health. I've learned in my journey that the word emotion means energy and motion, and crying is just releasing energy. Sometimes we grow up in families where we can't talk about things. We can't express our feelings. That's not good for our mental health. We're called a sissy or weak. And in my case, I grew up in a family where we always had to be tough. Like we couldn't show anybody that we were upset. We had to be tough and strong. And for women, can't always voice your opinion, or you have to be submissive. And so we go through generational traumas, and our responses are usually fight or flight. Next thing is resiliency. Mental health is resiliency. And with this, it's the understanding that in resiliency, we have the ability to bounce back from things. We have the ability to go through situations and understand that our situations are never meant to break us down or to make us give up, but instead they're there to teach us the strength and the courage that lies deep within all of us, the superpowers that lie within all of us. And it's taking those situations and each time we go through them, understanding resiliency, that each time we bounce back a little bit quicker. That's the beauty of resiliency. And then third, mental health is elusive. It's really tough sometimes to confront or face our fears, our anxieties, our sadness, our depression, our grief. And sometimes in mental health, we have to dig up those old emotions and those wounds, and we have to look them into the face and say, you know what, I see you, I recognize you. And that's not always hard. That's not always easy to do. The other side of that is if we work hard enough and we want it bad enough, we can take control of our lives and we can take control of the situations. And if we need to, seek professional help, and we can turn things around. We can become much happier and healthier and peaceful individuals. So for me, the above 3 points are very present in my life. They have been very present in my life. I've witnessed and experienced things that have tended to my generational traumas. I've witnessed and I've experienced things. I've had to look at the resiliency and my own ability to learn how to cope and to be strong and have courage and bounce back from things that have happened in my life. Some harder than others. And lastly, I've had to take control of my life. I've had to practice consistency on how I approach the stressful situations in my life. So today I want to inspire you guys. I want to inspire you to look at things differently. I hope to inspire you to find the strength within yourself to bounce back. I hope to inspire you to know that there is a better day that's waiting ahead. There is a light at the end of the tunnel. And lastly, we're all about solutions. I'm all about solutions. And I'm going to explain to you how meditation and mindfulness, which was introduced to me 7 years ago by my partner, has completely transformed my life. Like completely in astronomical ways. And so I begin with this. My dream to become a professional athlete began when I was probably 5 years old, but all of my life I wanted to be a professional athlete. I excelled in basketball and track, and in the small town of Big Lake, Texas, there wasn't much to do, really wasn't much to do. Sport was it. And not only was sport the only thing we did because we're in a small town, for me, sport was an outlet. It was escapism. It was a way for me to get away from some other things that I was experiencing in my life. And just like anything, when you spend a lot of your time doing one thing, you become very good at it. And I want you guys to take note of that, because it doesn't matter if it's good or bad. You do something bad for you or unhealthy for you long enough, you become really good at it. If you think a certain way that's unhealthy for a long time, you become really good at that too. And so I want you guys to remember that you're paying attention to your thoughts. Become good at thinking positive things. So my first story starts with me as a 12-year-old. I'm in 7th grade. I'm in my first track meet of my middle school career, and I'm a triple jumper, right? My first jump of my 7th grade middle school career, I landed and I tore all 4 major ligaments in my knee, my ACL, PCL, MCL, and LCL. And it was a really traumatic injury, like super, super traumatic. And not only was I going through that as a 7th grader and as a 12-year-old, at the same time, my mom had just been diagnosed with lupus and diabetes and was on her deathbed. She wasn't even at the track meet. And so at the age of 12, I have doctors who are telling me that my professional career is at stake. And at the age of 12, I'm looking at my superheroine, my mother, my best friend, my confidant, my everything, my mentor, as she's fighting for her life. No one told me how to cope with that. No one told me how to handle the fact that my career may be at stake, but also the most important person in my life could not be there anymore. That does something to your mental health. But my mom was all about positivity. She always taught me to find the positive in every situation. This was no different. So although this was a very rough experience for me, and I knew my comeback was going to be hard, I also knew that who I would be at the other side of it was what mattered. This was not about me tearing my knee. It was about the character that was going to come from me moving through the situation. And so I made a decision, because when you're going through things, it is all about a choice. I made the choice to say, okay, I choose to be the person that makes it through this. I choose the person to be strong. I choose the person who will never give up, because who I was at the other end of this experience really mattered to me. So in that, I learned about my own strength. I learned about courage. I learned about my own ability to come back. I learned my ability to choose to come back. And then more than anything, I learned that with the right mindset, I could come back from anything. My second story, I speak about my mother. Again, very impactful in my life. She was everything. We ended up getting through the situation, ended up getting through the rough time, her going through her experience by herself, me by myself, and then the two of us together as a team. But we made it. Fast forward, I get a scholarship, a track and basketball scholarship, get to go to Texas Tech, had a great career there. And we are on the plane traveling to New York City for draft day, because my dream had come true. I was being drafted into the WNBA. How sweet is that? We literally grinned from ear to ear the whole time. But it was just so amazing, because we knew what we had been through together as individuals. So make it to New York, played a year there. I got cut the next year, and I get picked up by the Indiana Fever. And so I'm at the Indiana Fever practice. It was actually the day of a game. And we were that morning having a shoot around, and we had practice guys that come in. So guys that come in and practice against us and stuff like that. And we were just sitting and talking after shoot around. And one of the guys looks at my shoes and he goes, "Wow." And he started laughing. He goes, "Why do you have 'wow' written on your shoe?" And I was like, "Well, it says 'wow' from where you're standing, but from where I'm standing, it says 'mom.'" And I say, I write "mom" on my shoes because when I look down and I lace up my shoes, this is like a tribute to her. You know, she's my why. She is the reason why I get up and I do the things that I do every day. She's my inspiration. And he kind of dropped his head and he was like, "Oh, I'm so sorry." And I was like, "Oh, no. I was like, she's okay. She's fine. She's healthy." I was like, "In fact, I'm getting tickets for her today to come, and her and my brother and my cousin to come and stay a while." I'm like, she's good. She's just my why. She's my X factor. She drives me. She wants me to work, all the sacrifices makes me want to just work hard every day. So he's like, oh, okay. So I'm going home after shoot around, getting ready, gonna have to get ready for the game. Pick up the phone. I called the travel agent for the fever. It's like, hey, I need 3 tickets. My mom, my brother, my cousin are coming. Let's get those flights. And she's like, okay, we got everything set up. Call my mom, no answer. Call my brother. I was like, hey, I'm so excited. I just got you guys tickets. And then my brother paused and he was like, Mom passed away. My mom had died just a couple hours before that call. And literally the earth was pulled out from under me. My heart was pulled out of my chest. Took a while to kind of gather myself. I started hyperventilating. Like it was nothing that I can describe. The worst thing that I think I had heard. And so within the next hour, I'm on a flight home. And my mom had always told me, she was like, if I pass away and you have a game, I want you to play. And I look at her and be like, Mama. She's like, no, I want you to play. And I want you to play so hard and with so much passion. Do it for me. I couldn't. I was too torn up. I cried the whole flight home. And I cried so much to the fact that there was a passenger who finally asked me, she's like, are you okay? And I said, no, my mom just passed away. And she ended up talking to me the rest of the flight home and consoling me, it was like my mom was the angel looking over me, because when we landed, this lady who had comforted me the whole flight happened to know my brother. And when they saw each other, they just gave each other a big hug. And it was just amazing. So I buried my mother. I flew back to Indiana within the next week or so. And I laced up my shoes and I looked down and I saw that mom, and I played the best basketball of my career. I played the best basketball of my life. I had to. I couldn't do it the night she passed away, but I did it. She still inspires me to this day. And so when I talk about this story and I talk about resiliency, we go through experiences. And with this experience, I experienced a great loss. But again, it was my choice to move on. It was my choice to pick up the pieces. It was harder. But I allowed myself to grieve. I allowed myself to be angry. I allowed myself to be frustrated and sad and even feel the loss. But at some point, we have to move on. So my point here is find your why. What's your reason? What's your X factor? Why do you choose to get up and go on? And if you don't have anybody to choose to get up and go on for, do it for you. Do it for yourself, because you, more than anybody else, deserve it. And then lastly, I have another story. We're talking about a knee injury at 12, losing my mother at 25. What else could go wrong? So now we're talking about my career. I spent 3 years in Indiana. Career was amazing. I grew as a leader there, all good. Go through training camp. So I played 3 years, and then I decided, I need a break. So I wanted to hang up my shoes. Hung up my shoes, went and played over Israel. And then soon after I retired, I knew it was a big mistake. I'm like, what am I doing? I still have some gas left in the tank. And so I decided to go back to the team after some tough conversations with the coach and some honest conversations. I'm like, I don't want to retire. I want to come back. So she's like, okay. So I go up to Texas Tech. This is where I trained, did all my training and got ready. And at Texas Tech, I was working out 3 weeks before training camp, and I took a jump shot and I came down on somebody's ankle or somebody's foot, and I severely sprained my ankle. So severely, the doctor or orthopedic told me that I would have been better off breaking it. So with my ankle black and blue, my leg black and blue all the way up to my mid calf, I go to the trainer at Texas Tech, who used to be my trainer when I played there. And I was like, I need to get ready for training camp. She was like, okay. And when you need to be ready, I was like, 3 weeks. She looked down at my ankle, looked back at me, and she was like, Shell, are you out of your damn mind? I'm like, yes. And I'm not missing this training camp. So we do whatever we have to do. We have 3 weeks to do it. So she gave me the prescription. We need to do X, Y, Z. I'm like, okay, cool. Long story short, I go back to the fever, have a great training camp, probably the best training camp of my life. And I ended up getting cut on the last day of training camp, cut from the team. And that was hard. I was at the height of my career playing my best basketball, but I got called into the coach's office and they were like, we're going to have to let you go. And it was really tough for me because I knew what I had to go through with that ankle to get there. Long story short, I leave the fever. I get picked up by the Seattle Storm and I became a WNBA champion. So the moral of the story is sometimes we fall. And sometimes we fall at the highest of heights. But what I learned in this situation is the higher you are up, you're going to fall a longer way and it's going to hurt a little bit more, but you're going to bounce up a lot higher too. And so I bounced back and I became a WNBA champion. Wow. Okay. You guys pick up your jaws. I know that's pretty cool. So in closing, the experiences in life don't stop. The solution for me was meditation and mindfulness. And I'm so thankful for those two things because when they entered my life, I learned so much about myself. There are tools that you need to have in your toolbox. You get to reconnect with yourself. You get to find the strength and the courage and the inner peace that lies within all of us. You get to accept yourself and love yourself. The point is, hurt people hurt people. So if you're hurting, if you don't express your anger, your frustration, your depression, your sadness, you're not only taking it out on you, you're taking it out on people that are around you and the people that love you. So think about generational traumas, thinking about your resiliency. Take a moment in silence. Meditation taught me that in silence, I could find the answers to those questions the answers that I seek. Why is this happening? What is this for? What do I need to learn? You deserve it more than anybody else. And so I leave you with this. Mental health is generational, it's resiliency, and it's elusive. But it doesn't have to be elusive. You can make it inclusive. Face your fears and anxieties and all of your emotions head on. Find a healthy way to cope. Scream when you need to. Take a boxing class and hit something if you need to. And cry if you need to. And lastly, let's love each other. Let's accept each other. Because when everybody is allowed to just be themselves and they're accepted, that makes everybody feel good. And as a wise, really inspirational person to me once said, nothing or no one can bring you happiness. What you seek is already within you. I wish you all the best of luck. Thank you so much for this time. Peace and love. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Shell. I would like to welcome Shell and Ameer back for this live Q&A, and I will just let you know that I have cried in front of every boss I've ever had, and people tell you not to do that in the professional world, but it has always paid off for me. These people really understood where I was coming from and what I'm all about and how much I care. So, hey, crying can do wonders. We have comments and questions coming in, so I'll just start from the beginning. And Ameer, this one is for you from Laura Sprouse. She says, do you find that people with perfectionist tendencies tend to have a harder time maintaining their well-being? And you're muted.
Yes, sorry about that. Yes, and the reason is because they are so hard on themselves, right? And nobody's perfect. But I think the question that Laura, I suppose, if I remember correctly, may be interested in is, well, how can we fix that? What can we do about that? And there are two quick things I want to mention because, very brief, I suppose. One is there are behavioral and cognitive interventions that we could do. I like to avoid the word intervention and just say tools, practical tools, something that we can teach people because interventions may have a negative connotation. And that could, one example of that can be the implementation intention. What can you do when that thought of perfection comes to mind? So we identify that thought, and then we give you a strategy of how to cope with that, how to deal with that, and then and then over time, it becomes a little better. So that's one thing. The other thing I would say is we teach them the value of failure, right? And so a lot of people learn about the benefits of success and how great it is, but maybe not as much about failure. But it turns out there is a lot of benefits in failure and how it can be very, very motivating if the structure of one's success equation is designed so that it has built-in failure. So just leave it at that for now.
Awesome, thank you. And Shell, I'll pop to the first question for you. This is from Diane. She says, Shell, thank you for your caring heart. What would you say to a youth who feels they don't have any self-worth, or a youth who is angry about life and stuck in the trauma of the past?
Yeah, thank you for the question. I think self-worth is all about, it's affirming yourself. So often we look for other people to give us that confidence. But it's finding the little things that you love about yourself and affirming yourself every day that you are beautiful, that you are smart. Self-worth is all about self-forgiveness too, which is, it's really hard to do sometimes because we're so hard on ourselves and we have this expectation and this standard. But it's being more forgiving of the things that you've done in the past. They're past for a reason. Letting those things go, and then just looking at the times in your life where your self-worth was challenged. Was it when you were a kid and somebody said something to you, and asking yourself if that's the truth? Because really, when people say things about us and it has an effect on our self-worth, it's just their perspective. That doesn't mean it's the truth. So what is true to you? And ride that wave. As far as anger, I would say, that's all about forgiveness too. It's going back. Sometimes I've written letters to people who have done me wrong and just forgiven them through a letter. I've envisioned them sitting in front of me across the table and me saying everything that I need to say to them. It's me sometimes giving them a call. And then at other times, none of that's needed. You just forgive them in your heart and in your mind, and then you let it go. You send a little prayer or whatever to them and say, you know what, I'm going to let this go. Because in all actuality, the anger that we're carrying around, it's not really having an effect on them. They've most likely moved on with their life. It's only hurting us. So we forgive and we let things go, not for other people, but we do it for ourselves so we can mentally and emotionally be well.
Thank you, Shal. And I think this question can go to both of you. How can you help address the problem of a youth or student that doesn't know where they want to go or what their interests are? How should peer supports help them discover their purpose? And Amir, maybe you want to kick us off with this one?
That's an excellent question. I believe it comes from Dana. Excellent question. So I would actually suggest a couple quick things. First, I would start by figuring out where or what keeps them up at night, and that may not be a usual thing that people do for a career. So what that requires, or what that may require, is us normalizing, career paths that are not already out there, that don't necessarily exist out there. So we got to be okay with that. And so starting there and normalizing that, and hoping that there's a snowball effect where that could lead somewhere. Because here's the reality of many of the decisions we make. Even if someone is very driven and has 5, 6 ideas that they can't pick from, when we want to help them with forming a direction, often we find it's as if it's a rat faced with a 3D puzzle, and there's food at the end of the puzzle, or sorry, maze, and there's food at the end of the maze, where the rat can't possibly figure out how to get there unless they start moving, and then they correct as they go. And so that's a lot of the cases that I see where that's needed for. The other thing quickly I want to mention is expose them to experiences in life as much as possible. If you're a caregiver, a parent, a teacher, a grade school, things like that. And combined with that will come role models. The science behind the research on the effect of role models is fantastic. I assume that's part of the reason why we have Shell here. So pleasure to hear from you, Shell. So those are just a couple quick things for how to get started.
Awesome, thank you, Amir. I would say, the same thing. We're taught so often that we have to fit into this box. One of the most important things that I've learned recently, like we used to say, we don't fit in a box or think outside the box, but how about thinking there's no box there at all? And so we're often driven in the direction that our parents want us to go, or what we think we should be doing to make everyone else happy. To find your purpose, you do what makes you happy. As long as it's not harming yourself or anybody else, go for it. And the thing that was so different with me in my life is, why do I have to choose one thing? I'm a complex person. I love multiple things. I'm going to do as many things. I've done 5, 6, 7 different jobs and projects at one time because I loved doing a lot of different things. And so it's not identifying with something in particular that you think you should do. It's trying it all. That's the only way we know that we like it. Is I can say, honestly, there's some things I know I don't want to do because I've done them and they don't make me happy. They don't fit with me. I know that now. And then, like Ameer said, what keeps you up at night? Your purpose literally is that thing that you can get up and do every day with a smile on your face. It doesn't feel like you're working. It puts you in this mood of just euphoria and bliss. And if it's moving the world and yourself in a positive direction, do that.
I love that. Thank you both. Another question that came in, this one from Diane. Again, it says, can you please say something about the focus on process versus outcome? Sometimes a person can feel defeated or hopeless as they wanted an outcome and it seems so far away. But what if one engages in a process or a flow, this can reinforce in a positive way pursuing one's dreams? I think Ameer or Shell, either of you can start with this one.
Okay. Well, here I would just say, it's baby steps. It's good to have a bigger picture and a direction and a goal in which we're going. But if we don't keep our eyes on the little things, it's almost like working backwards. Like, okay, I have this bigger picture, but I have to go through the little things first and really be good at those. We're so worried about the outcome a lot that we miss the opportunity to enjoy and be present in the moment of what we're doing. And so in addition to that, I would just say, just be okay with being present. Don't think about the outcome. Control the things that you can control. One of my favorite things that I've always told my students and people that I've talked to is, you can always control your effort and your attitude. The rest will take care of itself.
Excellent question, Diane. So many of you, I assume, have heard of growth mindset versus fixed mindset, right? We also have different names for those. We call them entity theorist and incremental theorist, right? And the beautiful thing about adopting a growth mindset is that you view every experience that you go through, regardless of the outcome, as a learning experience that you can grow from. And that's going to be there's a caveat there, which is a bit subtle, which is it is hard to do that. I'll admit to you, I've seen it in people, I've seen it, in my story as well. I've experienced it, which is if it's something you don't really care about, it's kind of hard to maintain that growth mindset. That's why it's really crucial, like Chell said, to find your meaning, find your purpose, and that why. That's what we call it, meaning and purpose. That why that keeps you up at night or gets you out of bed in the morning, and do that thing you're really passionate about. So when you do that, when you view every experience as a growth experience, then the results don't actually matter, or the outcome don't actually matter, but the process. And so along the way, that helps you get there. But also another thing can shift in your mind and your actual experience, which results in how you feel in your mind and how your physiological response happens, is what that means to you. Meaning that if you view something as a growth experience, but you connect that to a bigger thing, okay, to something that is beyond yourself. If you want something to push you, it's got to be very powerful. And the most powerful things we find in science are things that are beyond yourself. The ultimate meaning of life is serving others, improving the quality of life for humanity. And so you connect it to your purpose, and then that draws a lot of power from it. But if it's in isolation, it's hard for us to have that perspective where those experiences we go through, even sometimes positive, require a lot of patience because you're not going to realize that outcome, that result until later on. Like in pro sports, you're going to go 18, 19 years until you get that contract or you get drafted or something like that, right? So that's one thing that I think we should keep in mind. We learned the difference. So for interest of time, we're out of time here. We learned the difference between a growth mindset and a fixed mindset, and learn a little more details about what that does for you, and adopt a growth mindset.
I just have one more quick question for both of you, I think. How do you know when your dream or your goal is no longer worth it to you? So let's say you had a really big dream or a goal since you were really little, but we grow up, things change, your priorities change. When is that point where maybe striving for that goal is actually no longer beneficial for you? Is there a way to identify that for kids who are really striving for something?
I always say follow your heart. And this was something that I always said as a professional athlete was I wouldn't know when it was time for me to hang up my shoes and retire when if I ever got the feeling that I didn't want to practice. I loved going to practice. I loved competition. And one time I was sitting on the bus. We had just gotten to Minnesota. We're going to play the Lynx. And on the way to that practice, I was like, oh, I do not want to do this anymore. And so I think we get the signs. Sometimes we don't always listen to them. So it's like listening and seeing those emotions and feelings pop up within yourself. Like you lose the passion for it. You start to get angry because you have to do it, whatever that is. And then understand that the good thing about us being humans is we have the ability to choose, and we're flexible, we're adaptable, and we can change whenever we want. We're always making new dreams, setting new goals. That's life. That's the game that we're playing. So if you get over something, cool, pick something else and be great at that.
I would say that what I see working with people is that it is easy for them to let go of like goal number 50, so they can free up some time for goal number 1, right? But what's really hard, which happens sometimes, is that you having to choose between goal number 1, goal number 2. Letting go of goal number 2 is so hard, right? But often you get rid of number 1 and then move 2 up. So how do you know that it's time to do that? There are 2 ways you can figure that out. Number 1 is individually defined, right? So when do you think it's time for you to, like they say in sports, hang it up, right? Or the second way, which is there's some objective measures or let's say criteria through which you can get a signal for, okay, now it's time maybe to let go of that. If it compromises who you are, what you want to be, if it compromises your physical health, if it compromises your mental health and all that. Now remember what I talked about in my talk about how sometimes or you can make it so that succeeding brings you all that good feeling and happiness, and therefore there's that back and forth cycle. But if anything compromises that, then you don't want it, right? And what I see actually in the youth, especially since this is more focused on the youth, is the conflict between relationships and career, right? Relationships and career. And those are the 2 areas that people want to succeed in the most, is what I find in my research, right? And so, yeah, it's just going to be, some people will sacrifice this, over this, some people not. But ideally, what I advocate for is the best of both worlds, relationships and, or any two things that the mirror. But, again, you can make a decision based on your individual criteria for these, or objective things. You don't want anything that harms your health, your family, and so on.
If I may add to that too, Genevieve, that's great, Dr. Ameer, I love that. But it's like the other side of that is that's the good thing about not having an outcome in mind, because sometimes we aren't meant to do what we think we're doing. It's just like a playground for us to learn lessons to actually do what it is meant for us to do. So not being so tied to it, just say, okay, well, I wasn't meant to do that, but look at the skills and all of the things that I've learned from doing this for this short time, while I do find the things that I want to ultimately do.
Absolutely. And if I may add one last thing, it's just this. When it comes to what it is that you're meant to do in life, your purpose in life, what I find is something very, very dangerous for one's mental health and success and just their life in general, which is the assumption that you were born or that you have a purpose that's predetermined or anything like that. As in, you just need to discover it. And that's scientifically absolutely not true. It's a creation. You create your purpose. And I find that a lot of the youth get stuck in, oh, I don't know what my purpose should be. Great, I want a purpose, but I don't know what it should be. I'm just waiting to discover it. But in reality, you go and create it. So if you can create it, then you don't have to feel stuck in some area that you don't like anymore. You can create another one for it. But what I don't want to necessarily advocate for is letting go just because you wanted to quit or anything like that. That won't be good for your mental health or well-being or your success.
Well, thank you both so much. Oh my gosh, I apologize. We are about 5 minutes over time, but I think this is well worth it to hear from both of you and have that wonderful conversation. So again, thank you, Shell and Amir, for your time today. It was so great to have you as a part of this event. Hopefully next time we can do something in person. The pandemic seems to be close to ending, so fingers crossed. But this is the end of our Let's Talk Virtual Mental Health Conference. So thank you for everybody who stayed on and listened and participated in the questions. Just so you know, if you did submit a question during the event, you have been entered into our giveaway, and then the winners will be contacted by email. We ask all of you that are here today to make sure to check out ASHA International and Damn Worth It and see all the incredible work that they are doing in their communities. I hope everybody has a wonderful day, a wonderful rest of your week. And again, thank you for joining us, and thank you to all of our wonderful speakers.
Thank you. Thank you, Genevieve. Thank you. Amir, thank you.